right, you guys having fun? How do you like the Scott and Scott show? How are they doing for you? All right, you are in for a treat right here. The politicians are going away. These guys are fun coming up. I'm going to introduce one of them in detail. Matt Witworth worked on my campaign 5 years ago, did a great job. Young person, just dedicated, disciplined, media, great background. Get to know him. He'll be a friend of Liberty. But the longer introduction goes to a friend of mine from D.C. You will know who it is. And so listen very carefully. I'm going to go through this very slowly for you students out there so you see what it takes to get to this level in life. And so it's my honor to introduce a friend of mine named Sean Spicer. Everybody loves him. Served as the 28th, and let this seep in, 28th White House Press Secretary and White House Communications Director under President Donald Trump. And so let that sink in for a little. Both of those positions, White House Press Secretary, picture yourself doing that one, and then White House Communications Director, both. That's huge. Everyone here say huge. Huge. That's a huge job. So I'm just going to give you a few of the resume lines of Sean and let you see what's involved. First off, Sean grew up old school, walking to school, took steps he might share with you to get the best quality education he could get, K-12, and showed true grit and discipline at that young age, and it stayed with him all the way through. After graduating from college in 1993, Spicer worked on a number of political campaigns. In 1999, get this one, Spicer joined the United States Navy Reserve as a public affairs officer in all of his spare time. Let's give him a round for that one. He currently holds the rank of commander and is up for promotion in a few more months. And so, by the way, everyone training for the services, or in the services, raise your hand right here. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you all for serving this great country. I'm skipping around a little bit. From 2003 to 2005, Spicer was communications director and spokesman for the House Budget Committee. Put that on your resume line to see what's involved there. He's worked in the private sector on policy and strategy. In February 2011, Spicer became the communications director of the Republican National Committee. In February 2015, he was given an additional role as chief strategist for the Republican Party. On December 22, 2016, Spicer was named the White House press secretary for Donald Trump. 2 days later, on December 24, he was also named the communications director for the Trump administration. You can keep up with Sean by signing up at SeanSpicer.com. And with that, I give you my great friend, great American patriot, Sean Spicer. All right, brother. Don't give it to him.
Thanks, man. Thank you, Dave Bratt. I appreciate it. It's an honor and a privilege to be back here at Liberty. It is so refreshing to come back and be in a place like this that is respectful, professional, loves to talk about their faith, wants to hear the other side. It is so impressive what President Falwell, Pastor Nasser, and Scott have done with the CPAC event. This is truly an amazing event. The quality of speakers is so great, and it's great that Liberty has been able to be part of this and that Vice President Pence will be back here in May to address you in person. You know, one of the things that I talked about the last time I was here, and I talk about in my book, and I've talked about through my career, is that for the most part, it's been pretty much a given fact that the media is fairly left-leaning. But what we've seen more and more in American society is that everywhere that we turn, from the internet to daytime television to evening television, is dominated by folks on the left. It is their values, their issues, and so often issues of faith, issues of conservative policy and values are drowned out. Think about it. During the day, The View. At night, you hear Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, Samantha Bee, Trevor Noah, all of the folks on the left You see the internet dominated by the Huffington Post, Vox, Vice, the Daily Beast. Everywhere we turn, the stories and issues of the left are being pushed on us. It's rare that we see right-leaning content. Never mind just basic fairness, but seeing both sides. Take a quick look at a sample of what you'll see on late-night television.
Checks at gun shows. 89% of Republicans and Democrats are in favor of restricting gun ownership for the mentally ill. But not this gang. They voted against both of those things. So with all due respect, your thoughts and your prayers are insufficient.
Pence is constitutionally the only official in the White House that Trump can't fire, and that is worrisome because he is synonymous with some extreme positions like his opposition to abortion and gay rights. Just listen to Omarosa, who, remember, had first-hand experience working with him.
We would be begging for days of Trump back if Pence became president. That's all I'm saying.
Does the reality of the Trump administration match up to what you thought it was going to be?
For me, from my perspective, it's worse than I imagined.
Right.
I mean, I can't much worse. Like, I knew, I had my own predictions, but I didn't expect it to be this fast. I didn't expect everything to happen at this pace. I didn't expect it to be as incoherent as I feel it to be. I didn't expect it to be as mean-spirited as I personally find it to be.
I mean, think about this. As I travel the country and I speak at universities other than Liberty, one of the questions I'll ask is, when was the last time you heard somebody from a conservative perspective address you? In many cases, the answer is never. We're not even exposing people to both sides of an issue. They're hearing one thing on college campuses and universities. They're hearing one thing on television. They're getting one thing through the internet. We lack content that exposes people to the other side. One of the things that's so fascinating about Liberty is that you've developed this really unique and talented film program. The question that you have to ask yourselves is there a home for me when I leave? And I was really excited to come across a gentleman in my travels named Matt Witworth. And Matt had developed a series called The Swamp. Let me show you a quick clip of that.
This is pretty incredible. The House Majority Leader is fighting for his political life against Tea Party challenger Dave Brat.
It's not about Dave Brat winning tonight. It's about returning the country to constitutional principle. The machine said, no, you can't run for that seat. And I said, I don't understand this machine thing.
Right when I got here, the orientation was just unbelievable in the sense that we were being trained like some kind of animal.
The Senate is basically an incumbent protection racket.
Being a businessman from the private sector coming here, are you kidding me? It's like from the sublime to the ridiculous.
Did you eat the Colorado brownie I gave you?
He pointed to me and he said, I just want you to know around here, we don't reward bad behavior.
Most of my colleagues are afraid of losing. That's their biggest fear.
He has to have a victory. Really? At what point did any one person become more important than what was the best for individuals in this nation to fulfill their individual dreams?
I'd heard about people losing their seats on committees as a result of not voting the right way.
People think this is politics. Politics is just a superstructure.
And I often said, if it were a company, I'd have quit. Unbelievable. You don't need the rest of us. They make every single decision at the top.
Peter Pelosi and I had a...
The system's not broken, and there are good people here. The system's been poisoned.
As soon as you want something, they got you. As soon as you want something, you now become part of the swamp. That's the way the game is played around here.
So Matt had this idea. We had all heard a lot in the news about the Freedom Caucus. Who were these people? So why not do a documentary about them and see how it does? So he started going around and filming them. 25 million people viewed it on Facebook. There is a thirst and a hunger in our country to hear and see both sides, but in so many cases, the other side isn't even being presented. So today I want to introduce you to Matt. Here's what's going on. And also hopefully figure out, if you have an interest in the subject, how you can be involved in this fight. So without further ado, Matt Witworth. Have a seat. Good. So tell me a little bit about how the swamp came about.
Well, it was a frustrating process. We're going to get to this a little later. I've been really critical at conservative media and sort of how conservatives market themselves. And I knew some of the Freedom Caucus members, and I thought that they had fascinating stories. And it bugged me personally how the media characterized them, because they're made out to be radicals and extremists. And I wanted to have them tell their story and explain their ideology in their own words. And so I made a couple of calls. I reached out to Dave Brat first, and I explained what I wanted to do. And just started cold calling congressmen's offices and getting their comms directors on the phone and explaining to them what I wanted to do. And started having meetings. And then we went through this 6-month process of trying to get through House Ethics Committee and Office of General Counsel and all of these rules that we had to get around in order for these guys to appear on camera.
How much sort of what I would call industry support did you have?
None. And I couldn't get support from any conservative groups as well.
How old are you?
29.
29 years old. And were you amazed at the success of this?
Yeah, and considering we got 25 million views and we didn't spend any money on marketing because I didn't have any money to spend on marketing.
And what was your background in sort of filmmaking, documentaries?
So I started off working in talk radio for the late, great Doc Thompson, who just passed away beginning of February, and worked on Dave Brat's primary against Eric Cantor as a senior advisor to him, and then I was a consultant in DC for a few years.
But had you ever made a documentary before?
No, never made a documentary before, still do not know how to operate the camera.
So if you are a student at Liberty that has an interest in filmmaking or documentaries, what's your advice to them?
Well, that's it. I mean, everyone now carries around a video recorder in their pocket, right, on their cell phone. So you have people that are making amazing content and they're putting it out directly to the audience. They're putting it out on Facebook and YouTube. And bypassing a lot of the hurdles that used to exist, which is, how do you reach people and how do you put it in front of these people?
Did you pitch this to the Hollywood crowd?
So we pitched it last year to the Hollywood crowd. We went out to LA and met with a bunch of major distributors. And
how well received were you?
Well, it was well received that they loved the access and they loved the content, but they didn't like the people that we were interviewing, which is not surprising. Right.
So what else are you working on?
Well, so the Swamp did so well as a Facebook watch series that we actually had a major distributor come back to us in the fall. Okay. And we sold the Swamp. And so we're going to be filming the entirety of this year. And the Swamp will premiere the beginning of next year on a massive network.
But and so of the people that watched it, do you get any feedback from the viewers? Is it all Republicans, all conservatives? Is it in the middle? Who are the people that are consuming this?
Yeah, so that was one of the things that was the most surprising. We had liberal and progressive groups sharing the Swamp episodes, complimenting these guys in a midterm election year. So I would get alerts that Bay Area progressives shared the Swamp episodes. And I would click on it expecting them to be bashing these guys. And a lot of the comments were, I'm shocked that I'm hearing Republicans talk this way. I didn't know Republicans cared about these things. We had Tim Canova, who is the Bernie Sanders acolyte who ran against Debbie Wasserman Schultz, shared the Swamp episodes to his people and said, I encourage everyone to watch this.
And do you see the void? Obviously, the Swamp focused on making people understand or getting a better understanding of who the members of the Freedom Caucus are. What other realms do you think lack that kind of coverage?
Well, so on our side, the big issue is we have a really good strategy for phase 2, which is keeping people engaged who are already conservative. So we have talk radio, we have a lot of conservative news sites, we have Fox News. Where we have really dropped the ball is how do you get people in the door, and how do you reach the students who are not going to a Turning Point event or not going to CPAC? How do you reach them if they're in their dorm rooms just flipping through YouTube and looking for different content? Yeah. And there's several groups on the left, media companies, that have gone out and raised money, and they're getting billions of views online. Now This News is one of them. Now This was founded by 2 former Huffington Post executives. They're the largest video news publisher on Facebook. They're getting 2.5 billion monthly video views.
Can I show that we have a chart up here of the vote breakdown by demographic last cycle and come to the key states. The slide before that first, if I can. Take a look at this. The growing number of millennials and young people who are engaging is becoming the largest segment of the audience. So to your point, if we're not engaging with them on issues of faith, on issues of policy, we're losing them.
Well, and that's why this is important. So if you go to the other graph, you'll see the split. Now, I got a C in statistics, but I think there's a trend there, right? Yeah. Right where Jon Stewart starts to premiere. The most important lesson that conservatives and Republicans, especially in the media side, have forgotten is that politics is downstream of culture. And when Jon Stewart started to premiere and you started to have all of this progressive content on the airways and they were using social media in a different way, that's when that trend started to accelerate.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at that, more and more folks are getting their content online. And how many alternatives? Is there a faith-based show that you're aware of that's providing that to them?
No, so there's...
Is there a policy show that's...
Not on our side of the aisle, but there's several on the left.
Right.
This is where this is going to be a disaster for us in 2020. There's 88 million millennials. And in 2020, for the first time ever, millennials will outnumber boomers in terms of vote cast. And we don't have any content that is pulling those people who are in the center or sort of lean left over to our side.
So you're not aware of anybody that's doing right-leaning content to counter any of what they're doing?
There's a lot of people on our side that do conservative content. The problem is it's very hard news and it's very partisan. Right. And what the left has been very good at figuring out, especially on the digital side, is you can't just be all hard news. So Now This News is a great example. The top video that they did last year was this technology year in review. And they got 150 million views on Facebook from that one video. So that helps them build up a larger audience. It helps them pull in more people and expand their brand for people who may not come for the political stuff, but they come for that other content, and then they get exposed to the progressive content.
So with the success of The Swamp, what is the next video series that is on the horizon for you?
So one of the things that was fascinating is getting to spend time with these members and meeting these members. And there was a congressman who, over Thanksgiving, spent 11 days in Iraq and Syria and paid for it out of his own dime. And he and I were talking about it, and he goes, there's all of these religious minorities who are being oppressed in different countries. And I want to go to all of these countries and use my connections and tell the story about these religious minorities being oppressed and murdered and displaced. So I thought that fit perfectly into our narrative, right? This is a fascinating series that could appeal to people on all sides of the aisle, but then we can start peppering in other types of content. So the series that we're working on is Exile, and we have the clip for that.
No one is reporting this. What I've seen over the last year has terrified me. These people are being targeted because of their religion.
In a wave of barbaric and horrifying murders.
We can't go back to our home.
Nothing prepared me for this. This is the story of Exile.
Wow.
Thank you.
So what is it that you hope to accomplish out of Exile?
So this is a series that would resonate with people across the political spectrum. And that's what we have to start doing from a content creation standpoint, is not just focusing on trying to get our talking points out to people. It's what other forms of content can we use to reach people who have never heard from conservatives directly? How can we use series like Exile to get them in the door and then expose them to other series like The Swamp?
So, okay, where you've got the Freedom Caucus that in The Swamp is letting people see who some of these lawmakers are on, frankly, a more personal basis, understand their decision-making process. Exile, I think, takes us inside the cause of religious persecution, what some of the folks around the world are facing, that I would argue that most Americans probably don't fully appreciate what the battles and impediments that so many millions of people around the world are trying to overcome to practice their religion. What other subjects or areas would you think need to get looked into?
Well, I think we have to be better storytellers for what we believe. And I'm on the Hill a lot, and I see Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez all the time. And I can tell you she has a bubbly personality. And I sort of cringe when I hear other conservatives mocking her and bashing her, because we can think that her ideas would do damage to the country, but she's incredibly effective at what she does. And when she puts something forward like the Green New Deal, our side always comes out with the talking points about, well, it's going to cost this amount of money. They miss the point that there are millions of people who don't follow politics in the news regularly. And when they hear her versus people from our side, she cares and we don't, and we're just we're only concerned about the dollars. So we have to find better ways of being storytellers for our side.
So if you're a student at Liberty right now and you say, there's a cause I care about, there is an interest I have in filmmaking, what do they do?
So the biggest obstacle that I had for The Swamp is that none of the conservative groups saw the value in it. So they weren't willing to write a check. So I had to bootstrap and find videographers and audio guys and try to put together this team to get the series done. And there's a big generational divide on our side between the guys who are controlling a lot of the dollars and how they want to spend those dollars.
Right. They still, I see this a lot where I think they want to see more 30-second ads. Is that where you think that the money should be spent?
No. They spend the money on the 30-second ads because the consultants take 15% off the top of the ad buy, right? So there's not an incentive on our side to try to do new things or to try to back a series like The Swamp. And surprisingly, after the midterm elections, there was a big survey that was done. 40% of millennials, again, 88 million millennials, 40% did not see a single political ad last cycle because they're not on television. They're cord cutters.
And so, getting back to the question, you're a student at Liberty, and either one, let's just start with this. You have a particular cause that you care about, an issue. How do they channel that?
Well, that's the big frustration, right? There's nothing on the right that is going to help harness those students and to say, hey, come make great content for us. So what I want to do is work to try to find those students, right? I've sort of paved the ground from a groundbreaking documentary series and bootstrapping and then getting it sold to a major network. So there is a strategy there that I know, right? I've laid the groundwork, so I know how to navigate it. So if you're a Liberty student or you're a content creator, and it doesn't matter the subject matter of what you're looking to produce, if you want to produce interesting content, that's something that we can tie into the larger agenda of exposing people to the things that we believe in. So you can go to mattwhitworth.com, give me your email address, shoot me a note and say, hey, this is the stuff I've done or this is the stuff I want to do, and let's connect.
And getting back to the, I know that there's some students that are involved in the film program. What's the level of expertise that someone has to get into to turn something into the quality of The Swamp?
Well, again, I still don't know how to work a camera, right? And I just sold a show for millions of dollars. So you don't have to know everything. And this is actually great life advice for all of the students in the room. The best thing that you can do in your professional career is surround yourself with people who are a lot smarter than you, right? You've done that, other people have done that. And that's what I did with The Swamp. So if you have an idea for a series, there's going to be somebody down the hall or a friend of yours who probably knows how to put it together for you.
Was there one moment when you knew, you went from 0 to 25 million. When did you feel, when was that threshold that you knew this thing's taken off? Was it a week, 10 days, a month?
It was not spending any dollars to market it and just see organically on a brand new standalone Facebook page how well it performed and how many people. We had one episode that 150,000 people shared, and we only had 125,000 people following the page. So it was, the content resonated enough. And the thing that was really surprising is our longest view time came from 18 to 35-year-olds.
And so was it influencers that shared it? And then how do you harness that in going forward?
We had influencers that shared it, but they were not just conservative. So you had the liberal groups and the progressive groups who were sharing it.
Well, I think the thing that I find fascinating about the two projects is that it's not an overt, become a conservative, support this cause. It's almost just educational, right? I mean, I think that's the interesting thing. You saw the clips of the late night shows. They're very in your face, right? You saw Jimmy Kimmel saying, if you support the Second Amendment, then you're on the wrong side of history. You saw, these other folks on whether it's The View or Samantha Bee, they're very clear in theirs. What I think is fascinating about the two things that you've done so far is it's not in your face. It's saying, I want to expose you to this issue.
Well, when you look at the swamp, we didn't talk about Freedom Caucus in the episodes. And you don't see a Republican or an R next to these guys' name. So a lot of people out there watched the episodes and then they were Googling trying to figure out the political affiliation. So you had a lot of people that had that aha moment realizing, wow, these are the, extreme conservatives I've heard about on Jimmy Kimmel.
Do you think part of your success is because you didn't do that, whereas if you had put an R or marketed it specifically to conservatives, that you wouldn't have done as well?
Yeah. I mean, if we had said, this is the Freedom Caucus, this is what they believe, people would have tuned out before they even gave it a shot.
So in so many ways, on a lot of key issues, that seems to be maybe a better approach, which is to come at it from an educational, straight-up standpoint than trying to be a cheerleader for the cause.
Right, exactly. And that's why we really have to move away from just using facts and stats to try to convey our arguments and to figure out how we can find the personal elements.
On the swamp, the individuals, the members of Congress that you talked about, what was their reaction that they were getting from others as people had seen it?
Well, it was, what was frustrating is a lot of the Freedom Caucus members didn't want to participate in the swamp because I told these guys from the beginning, this is not, I don't want your stump speech. And you have zero editorial or creative control. So if you say something stupid, it's going to go in the show. And even after we started producing these episodes and they started getting great feedback, some of the members said, I had liberals in my district who would come up to me and say, hey, I saw you on the swamp, I misunderstood you, I apologize. So, that was fascinating to hear.
So, I mean, their reaction was it universal that they thought it was a positive experience, or was there any downside to appearing in it?
Well, they stuck around for the Facebook series, and now they're sticking around for where we're going to end up next year, and we've added new members as well.
Okay, that's great. So, if you've got, as I mentioned earlier, you've done the Freedom Caucus, you've kind of brought this in. I think with the exile, you've gotten into religious liberty and persecution. What other subjects in our society do you think need to be covered in that kind of way?
Well, I think you can do tech and you can do science and you can find ways that you can get very subtle messages about limited government. You look at when Barack Obama gutted NASA, right? You have all of these companies now, even startups on small scales that have gone out and said, fine, we're going to be the ones who send people to the moon. We're going to be the ones who send people into space. So those are sort of fascinating things that you can use to convey our messages in a way that is very subtly political.
Great. I want to thank Matt Witworth for being here once again. If you have an interest in this, mattwhitworth.com. If you're interested in me, just go to SeanSpicer.com. Thank you. It's been an honor to be here today at Liberty again.
Thanks, guys.